Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, John. The whole cloud thing. Oh, excuse me, let me just say that I've actually got a cold at the moment, so I might be a bit croaky, or I might have the odd coughing break. So please excuse that. The whole cloud thing became interesting to the LGAQ when Vivek Kumra visited Australia 3 or 4 years ago and dropped off in Brisbane and spoke to a couple of people there. Oh, thanks, John. Including the CEO of the LGAQ and the president, and he enthused people with what the US government and the General Services Administration was doing. GSA is the body in the United States that everybody in government buys things through. And the bottom line was, he said, okay, the US government, it's cloud first. You don't have a choice. If you can't get a solution in the cloud, then we'll look at something else. And within 2 years, his bottom line was that for all the new projects that they'd started since that point, they'd actually reduced their costs by 50%. That's the sort of thing that gets management in not just the public sector, but in every sector pretty interested. If you can look at a situation going forward where you get the same result for a lower investment, it's compelling. That's the background as to how the LGAQ got involved. Just to clarify some definitions so that everybody knows what we're really talking about. We heard some other cloud definitions this morning. Our definition is it's a special case of the broader concept of converged infrastructure and shared services. For local government, it's particularly applicable and becoming more applicable today as our budgets are being squeezed, and the cost of maintaining and exploiting the technology that we have is becoming more expensive because the technology itself is becoming more complex, and the skills that we need in order to run those more complex environments are more expensive. It also means that we have to have broader and deeper partnerships with our vendors. That as well brings additional expense and complexity to the business. In a general sense, a vertical sector like local government, there is a propensity or a capability of being able to share at some level, simply because of the fact that every council, every local authority in the world basically does the same thing, and therefore it's highly likely that there are a number of processes which are exactly the same in any two local authorities, and economically it makes sense that if we can share the costs of running those processes and deliver the same result, it's a good thing. That's background. Specifically, what are our customers saying to us? I'll talk in some detail later about who those customers are, but as in the same way that Anna's list had some goods and some bads, the goods that we're getting back are for the size of council that we're typically dealing with, which are the sub 100,000 population type councils. The expertise that the cloud provider brings makes it easier and cheaper and causes less downtime. You can make things happen faster. Costs are lower. They're not orders of magnitude or half or anything like that, but they are lower. the really positive two things are that people spend less time fixing and more time doing, and it means that they can actually do new things. Ovum did a national study at the end of 2011, start of 2012, on government, ICT in government, particularly slanted towards cloud. Their conclusions, it's a very interesting paper, but their conclusions are that what you get with cloud is that stuff there. You actually get some more time and the capability to do new things. And Resolute IT, which is one of the other LGAQ businesses very closely associated with GovCloud, did on behalf of the council for a mid-sized regional city, ran a review of their ICT operations middle of last year. And this is sort of, I would say, would be the case in probably 80% of the sub 100,000 population councils. That overall, what is being done in terms of managing the legacy applications and the existing network, it's all pretty good. It's all relatively acceptable, but it's just too hard to do new things, and people really want a way to break that cycle, so that when the parks manager comes in and says there's a whole new community way of booking the rotunda for weddings, can we put it up? And the ICT manager says, we'll put it on the list, and it'll probably be a 3-month project because we'll have to do this and we'll have to do that. People don't want to do that anymore. And in fact, what is happening in this particular city is that whole shadow IT thing that Rob mentioned before. They just went ahead and did it and told the IT people about it much later. What's not good, and again, as Anna said, when I first used to look at these issues a couple of years ago, some of them were almost showstoppers. Almost all of them these days are manageable. Some of the worst ones are vendor lock-in. Without doubt, that's the thing that you don't want, because you get stuck in an environment which, as long as you've chosen wonderfully well, with great foresight as to what's going to happen for the next 3 years, you'd be pretty happy, but you'd be in a very small minority of the people that we've been talking to. It's in an environment which changes as much and as often as this particular one. It's hard to make a good call over a long period of time. And the operational risks, they all certainly do exist. Failure of the provider is the one that I spend the most time looking at. But in most of the kinds of councils that we talk about, they already have a much higher risk profile in what they do on a day-to-day basis. The little dialogue that we have is along the lines of, is your data centre bomb-proof? Is your data centre really, really fireproof? Will your data centre withstand an impact from a careering out-of-control semi-trailer? What happens if you have a flu epidemic in the town and 60% of your staff, etc., etc.? So that the risks of putting those things into the cloud, most of those risks are not there. So that's a judgment call. Most councils have a more difficult decision-making process than than most private sector organisations, and there are many more aspects to making a decision to go into the cloud than the simple economics. Those of you who are from rural areas know that the concept of keeping jobs in the town or jobs in the area is a very real, it's a political reality that people won't walk away from. And I can tell you in Western Queensland, where populations are relatively small and considerably smaller than what they are in Victoria, the whole job protection thing is the first thing that you have to beat when you talk to people about cloud. And even if the CEO or the CIO wants to do something, he still has to convince the council that it's a good thing that that he doesn't need to have two people anymore. He can live with one. Of course, you might have all faced that once or twice before. What can local government do about cloud? If you don't do anything, then it'll be a world run by the vendors and possibly by our friends in state government. In Queensland, possibly that's less of a risk now because the state government is pretty much saying to local government, go and fix your own problems, we've got enough of our own, we don't need any of yours. We could all go our own way, develop a private cloud. That is a workable approach. I think what it actually means is that we really don't get any benefit from sharing, or from the fact that many of us do the same things as the council next door. And it does mean that the big councils, the richer councils, will get richer. And obviously the approach that I'm proposing is that we have a collaborative approach in the sector. It's not a perfect way of doing things, but there are aggregation and sharing possibilities which only come about through the advent of technology such as cloud that we should seriously look at and take advantage of. We're doing a couple of those things in Queensland. I'll talk about that in a moment. LGAQ made the decision that it would head down this path. The mantra is individual solutions, shared costs, shared risks, and the writing instructions to the organisation was that it had to make available infrastructure and services to all councils. So from Blue Shire with its 320 people in far southwest Queensland, all the way through to Brisbane City with a population of 1.2 million. And the other part of the brief was that the services had to be world class. The LGAQ has a service cluster with 3 business entities in it. We're talking today about GovCloud. I'm also director of Resolute. Resolute does IT services and applications. And the other business, the bigger business, is Propel Partnerships, which does basically process outsourcing and shared services. One of the concepts that Mike talked about this morning was 311, which is, for people who've lived in the United States, you know that there are some telephone numbers that everybody knows. 911 is the emergency number, 611 is long distance information, 511 is local information. Well, 311 is the number that you call for anything to do with your local council, local authority. In several major cities, particularly New York, Philadelphia, Houston, and Mississauga in Canada, a big city on the outskirts of Toronto, they've spent a lot of money investing in the self-serve transformation of 311 away from telephone to self-serve by the internet, mobile, smartphone, whatever. And each of those has been a different kind of implementation, but they are all heading to a situation where they are fundamentally cloud-based services, and they're adding applications that are basically cloud applications. There's one in particular which is to be able to report a pothole or an abandoned vehicle or any one of those things. It runs on a mobile app. It goes to a cloud service which is actually run by a company in Boston, which then distributes the request that comes in to to the council in whose area the fault is made. Propel is promoting that technology and mainly the back-end processes that support it. If we have some time later, I'm happy to talk about that. So we put GovCloud together. The thing that we decided not to do was to build it and let people come. We had lots and lots of help and advice from the vendor community, all with the same argument, which was that we should build it and that we should take all the risk. Build a nice $50 million, $80 million data centre and etc., etc. We said that really isn't what we're going to do, because we don't know where councils are going to go, and we really don't know if this whole cloud thing could just be a brief phase. So we decided to take the path that Anna was talking about before. So we're a managed service provider in the middle. So we have an infrastructure provider or a set of providers and our council customers, and we work in the middle. Our strategy, our business strategy, which is the same strategy that we promote to our council customers, is to start small, and as confidence grows, you can get bigger. We're based on the Telstra platform. And for many of the reasons that Stuart was talking about, it's safe, it's secure, it's extremely low risk. Some of the other things he was saying about the services may have been a bit of vendor talk, but certainly in terms of the reliability and security of the platform, we haven't found a better one, particularly not one that meets the requirement that this stuff has to be in Australia. The other thing that we said we would do was just to provide solutions to the common processes, but common being the definition that I've got there, used by most councils, and they are very simple things: backup and storage, email and some applications, and infrastructure as a service, servers and hosting, and DR. And DR is not data replication. DR is a different thing altogether. But the bottom line was we had to be in a situation where we could say that we were actually, and prove that we were actually providing real value to councils. That's why we chose Telstra. A couple of the things that Stuart didn't say, they are actually the biggest provider of hosted services to government in the country, and their network computing investment is very attractive to a small partner, because we know that where they're going to go is the right place. Just an interesting thing, when we first started doing the looking at how we would do this, we said, well, why don't we try and do it ourselves? We'll find a good data centre, and well, the best thing we could do, the best price that we could get for a rack for 10 racks of servers, so about 250 servers with some SANs and stuff like that. We went out and we checked how we would go from did a price comparison of what Amazon would sell that to the market, and the very best price that we could get was 30% more than Amazon's sell price to the market. So the idea of being able to do it ourselves was nonsense. The pricing that we get from Telstra is competitive. It's not, because it's Telstra, it's not cheap, but it's competitive. What we offer today and what people are buying are those things on the left. Hosted and backup email. One of the things we're really good at in Queensland is bad weather, and we have lots of, we regularly have disaster situations, and people react very differently to it. In the cities, so the example of that is the city of Gympie, which has about 30,000 people, about 150k north of Brisbane, has a river runs through the middle of the town which floods absolutely guaranteed once a year, and in a really good year it might flood 4 times. And what that does is completely split the town and takes out half of the infrastructure. So the way that we built the disaster recovery environment there was that everyone wants email. So what we have to be able to do is, even if both of their data centres go down, they still want people to have email, so that the engineer can mail a map to the SES coordinator, so etc., etc. And so we run the email on the GovCloud platform. It replicates to the daily, to their data centre. The moment the data centre goes off, the replicated backup mail system takes over. We have that in 6 councils now, and about to put it into a 7th. Infrastructure, so that's just, we need a server, can you give us one? Website hosting, that's the biggest part of our business. I've got a little story to talk about why we do a good job. Backup as a service. Backup is, I've been in the industry since the 14th century, and the worst thing we do as an industry is backup. All of us actually, we tick the box. Yes, we do backup, and about 20% of us actually understand what we're doing, why we've taken the backup, and what we're going to do if we ever have to use it. Backup as a service, as Anna's diagram just did that perfectly for us today, was if you've got an airline or a bank to run, you've got a completely different view of disaster recovery. Councils don't have to run in the same kind of way, but we do need to be able to get our data back sooner than a week. And backup as a service is a very, very convenient way of providing that. Disaster recovery is, the way that we package disaster recovery is mainly a bunch of services up front, which is making sure that there's a well understood strategy which meets the requirements of the council, that there's a link to the overall business continuity plan that the council has, and that's then provisioned as as backup as a service, some backups and a set of cold VMs, which are, the term they use now is hydrated. At the moment that someone turns the switch and says we need to go to backup. It's much less expensive than a full replicated environment, but as long as your recovery time objectives aren't minutes, then it's a really good solution. And we're also doing a document solution. Dropbox, as my technical guys say to me, Dropbox is the most easily hacked service in the world, and for people particularly, it's a very popular way of council sending information to councillors, and we've got a solution which is, every solution's hackable, isn't it? All the IT guys know that. This is less hackable than Dropbox. We have some other things in near development and some things which are a bit further down the track. I'll just say that one of the things that Rob said really resonates with me. The real value of cloud is in the software, in the applications that you use, and in the private sector generally. There's a strong appreciation of that, and a lot of momentum towards that end. So, you know, everyone uses Salesforce as the example, but there are plenty of other examples as well. In the public sector, that's not the case. In the public sector, the software applications that tend to be used are more. So email, while it's a software application, is actually more of a platform. There are very few applications per se that are in the cloud. And I think that's, you know, in government we tend to be more conservative. We tend to take longer to make a decision because we have much greater scrutiny and processes that accompany that decision. And the value for hosted SAP or hosted Tech One or whatever is not actually, the business case is not actually there at the moment. I think it is coming, but I don't think it's there right now. So what does the guy in the middle do between the infrastructure provider and the customer? We do that stuff, you know, we actually do all the order handling, ordering from Telstra through the portal, as Stuart put it, looks like a really easy thing to do. It's not actually that easy, and unless you want to accidentally get a bill for 20 VMs, you do need somebody who knows what they're doing. And that's one of the things we do. We also help with actually making the transition, moving the application or the data or whatever, making sure that it happens. We provide support, and probably the most important thing we do is account management. So we help people solve problems. In local government, that's always difficult. You've got joint accountability, and it's much easier for the council to have someone to call to fix the problem than to try and solve it itself. Here's the honour board, the sort of customers that we have at the moment. Most of these are relatively small spends, but nevertheless they're customers. Takes a lot longer to load than I thought. An example, Burdekinshire, which is just south of Cairns, Townsville rather, centred around Ayr, Home Hill. Wonderful place, great fishing. One of those places that gets all the bad weather, and regularly the council offices are closed, either because the town's flooded or there's a cyclone or something like that. So the website's really important. The most important means of communicating with the community before the problem starts, when the problem's happening, and then afterwards when you're trying to get everybody back to work. They asked, the Queensland Audit Office told them that they needed to have a backup to the website because it was a weakness. They didn't want to go with GovCloud. They didn't want to go with anybody. They wanted to build a temporary facility in the Shire a bit further down the road. Fortunately, common sense took over. Even if it hadn't been GovCloud, it had to be somebody in a location other than was also going to get flooded and hit by the same cyclone. So what we did for them was we created a mirror of their website so that if anything happened, then we could just switch over. So it happened and nobody noticed. It just happened. So we're now in the process of reversing the polarity of the backup and the real one. The real one will be in the cloud and they'll keep a backup there for some reason. That's the website. Another thing that we've really been able to make headway with is we call the program Redundant Solutions for Disaster Scenarios, and that backup email that I was talking about before is exactly that. We've got a couple of other applications that we host as well. The most important thing is the fact that we can help them keep their communications up, and that's always a really big problem as you guys have to deal with bushfires and floods, the same thing. But the hardest problem is making sure that everybody knows what's going on, and the RSVS program has really worked well in helping people keep those things. It's relatively inexpensive, but works extremely well. This is the Disaster Hub. This was actually paid for by, what are they called? NDRP. And that's a statewide before, during and after thing. Each one of, or that particular generalised site can be customised to an individual council. And many of the very heavily hit councils actually do have, I'm not going to do an example or anything like that, they do actually have the customised things so that when you, in the before, during and afters, instead of just having generalised information, it actually has, here's the address of the emergency shelter that's closest to this town and things like that. Just to show how that works, when Hurricane Sandy went through northeast of New York, GSA, all of that system was cloud-based. They had almost no interruptions because they were able to deploy to backup versions, even though they had a major telco outage in New York itself. And one of our customers, Paul Finley at Toowoomba, we've got a bunch of their disaster-related websites and applications which we run in the cloud, so that, again, with Toowoomba it's not if, it's when they have the next issue. No one has to worry about that stuff. It's all taken care of. And my voice has lasted for the whole thing, so happy to take a question or two if there's time.
You mentioned about proving value. What are the metrics you've been using to quantify that? Mainly
related to backup email. That the provision of alternative services, which are, you know, 2As and additional stuff. If everybody can satisfy that all they have to have is a smartphone, and that Telstra and Optus have actually got the tower working, that's it. Then the $1,000 a month or whatever it costs to have the backup email running ready, it's, you know, 5 2-way radios will cost that much. So that's how it's going. But the principle though is that we do work at a very small micro scale for all of these decisions. We're not trying to in any way at all boil the ocean here. We're just doing point solutions, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's worked, because people councils are actually able comfortably to move into it, trial it, see that it works. If it doesn't work, you just turn it off. We haven't had anybody do that, but you can. And then you can move on to the next thing. It's just something you don't have to worry about anymore.